So we are so excited today to have Reginald Day, a certified lactation consultant and the leader of our fatherhood group here at Nature's Playhouse. I am Desiree Cameron, so excited to be able to have this chat with Reginald about partnership support with breastfeeding and supporting a breastfeeder, chest feeder. This is on behalf of the Nature's Playhouse free lactation and feeding clinic that we've had for the past about 4 or 5 months so far, and we've supported so many families. And this is our last community outreach talk to really hone in on why breastfeeding is so important and how we can better support our breastfeeders and chest feeders. So, Reginald, if you don't mind, can you just introduce yourself and let us know all about you?
All about me? I don't know about all about me, but I do a little bit. I do a little bit. What's going on, Desiree? And what up to everyone who is watching? Again, my name is Reginald Day, and I am a certified lactation counselor. Above that, though, I would like to say that I am a proud husband and father of two breastfed children who are now teenagers. And I really enjoy what I do. I enjoy serving families. Partnering with Nature's Playhouse has been wonderful. Worked with them for many years. And then in the last 3 years, we can kind of say we made it official. And we've supported hundreds of dads. Yes, hundreds of dads on their journey of fatherhood. And with that, many of them wanting to know more about breastfeeding, right? And how to just be present, and to support their partner along that journey. And so, again, excited to be here. I could go into so much more, but I want to not bore you with that and get you the information that you are watching.
Yes, thank you for that, Reginald. And so I guess we just get started and start with just the first question really is just how can partners help with feedings for those who are breastfeeding?
So I think that's a great question, and when I think about that, my mind goes back to my own journey, and it kind of feels like left out, as a dad, as a partner, you're like, man, what is my role? I can't bring the baby to my chest. Like, what am I supposed to do with that, right? And so it's like, it feels like it's an isolating experience or one that's strictly for mom or the breastfeeder and chest feeder and baby, but it's like, no, this is an opportunity, right? So I always like to say there's always opportunity. You just have to look for it.
Mm.
And when it comes to being able to support, one of the things I found to be helpful of many things was bringing baby to my wife, bringing baby to mom. I think that's a huge support, especially in those midnight hours when no one wants to get out the bed, right? But
Right.
when baby's ready to eat, like being able to bring baby there, based off of like the side life, feeding. We can kind of talk about that later. But some
Mhm.
other practical things I think that's very important to do is, early on, mom may need help, a birthing person may need help, and chest feeder may need help with expression, right? Expressing milk or having bottles or things to express the milk into. And so thinking about ways to take on some of those other duties, right?
Mm.
Maybe mom is pumping, right? Maybe chest feeder is pumping. And so what do you do with that? Well, you become the pumping supply cleaner, right? You become the
Right.
one who makes sure and navigates to make sure all the supplies are there, ready to go, so that becomes one less thing to think about, and they can focus on their job, which is just feeding the baby and or pumping, right? And so those are some of the I think I would say more immediate things that come to mind when partners looking to see, well, what can I do to support?
Okay, yes, I do agree with that. It's just being able to be that those bottles are not fun to wash. So any help that we can get on that would be great because it's very tedious process, especially with the breast pump and the tubes and
The
all those
tubes,
things.
all those tubes, yes, yes.
But it's so helpful to have that support, especially if you're a new mom and you're trying to learn how to breastfeed for the first time.
Hmm.
So I know that that can be really tough. And so having someone to support you, and we're not just saying dads, if this is if auntie,
Right.
grandma, uncle, anybody that could support that
Best
would be,
friend, neighbor, yeah.
yeah, that would
Whoever
be
you got.
nice. If you can wash dishes, you can wash a bottle and some
There you
pumps,
go. There
supply.
you go. There you go.
Um, And so my question is that, as you know, the Black maternal health rate here in the United States,
Hmm.
and they're not, even though we're pushing a lot for more home births,
Hmm.
because it's the safest, we're pushing a lot more for midwives to be in the space. We're
Yes,
not completely there yet. And so a lot of births are happening where there's C-sections and inductions and all these things. And a lot of trauma comes with that at times, especially if the birther doesn't have, you know, the doesn't know about advocacy yet.
correct.
So going through all of that and then now having to breastfeed, how can a partner support in those types of spaces?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think that it's important to understand the emotional, right, toll that the birther is going through, and how that factors, number one, into breastfeeding. Um, One of the things that I continue to remind dads of is that when the birther is stressed, right, lactation is hindered.
Mm,
There's no doubt about it. And so, how do you, in your role as supporter, reduce the stress so that breastfeeding can be as successful as possible?
mm,
And knowing that stressors are a factor, when showing up, you want to show up with, a level of humility, grace for each other. I think those are two big components of it. But also knowing that based off that trauma, what can you do to bring the team together? I think it's so important, like you stated, having a midwife, having a doula, having that supportive team to help with advocacy is huge because that's one less thing to worry and or stress about. But when that's not there, it's making sure that you understand when the birther is going through this process of navigating and transitioning back home, that there may be a level of emotional awareness that you have
mm,
to help mom and help birther come to the place where, okay, those things are they happen, they existed, right? But now we're here. Let's start from this point to move forward, trying to reduce all level of that stress and trauma and acknowledge that, hey, yes, that was not a great experience. um I think it's so important because then it also grounds you as the partner, right? It
yeah,
grounds you into the space. It grounds you, and actually, in some ways, can unite you both on this journey so that you're starting from the same spot. It's not like you're removed and like you're coming in like, what are you talking about? No, no, no. You're there, right? And now you
right.
can move forward.
Yes. And, on that topic of just emotional support, right? As a, you always hear, especially like the elders in our family, like you can't take care of someone else if you don't take care of yourself. So
Hmm.
as that support person, how can they take care of themselves in order for them to be able to support that person who is going through that birth and is breastfeeding and going through the entire journey of breastfeeding? How can they support and fill themselves up?
It's a great question, and I know for many of the dads that we support in the space, and just in general, even myself, it's like you're almost told that you don't matter, right? And when you have that mindset or you hear that, then you think that you don't have a right almost to have emotional ups and downs or have the ability to take some time for yourself. But that's just not true, right? So I think number one is acknowledging that it's okay to need time, right?
Mhm.
Now, quickly transitioning from that to the next caveat, that doesn't mean you take 3 hours and leave the birther like, hey, I'm struggling over here. Like, no, 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 no.
Right.
Sometimes it may be 30 minutes, but make that 30 minutes count,
Mm,
I tell dads all the time, I say, if you a gamer dad, this is not to say you can't game. This means that you're going to have to adjust your gaming schedule and or the amount of time you game. But if that's a self-care that you need, then definitely get that self-care, right?
right.
Um, and a lot of times that goes into also communicating, right? Communicating your needs with your significant other, communicating your needs with the birthing person to know, okay, I just need this right now, but if you give me this 30 minutes, I got you for 3 hours. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm there for you. And so I think those are huge, some initial, I'd say initial huge steps that you can take to number one, make sure you're filling your own bucket so that you can be there to help support others.
Yes, and just to add to that, don't forget to eat. Don't forget to
Yes.
hydrate and drink
Yes,
some
yes,
water.
yes, yes.
Don't forget to get out in nature, please.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to the birds,
Mm-hmm.
take the baby with you and go outside for a little bit. If it's warm, at least, and get
Yeah.
natural air.
And I think that gets into the other part of it, right? Like when I think about that, again, some things I share with dads is like, okay, if you need your time, that's great, but then don't forget, right, to repay that, right? And so, being able to carry out, and one of the talks I do in CBE is I talk about the 7 C's, and one of those C's is carrying, right? Carry everybody out the house, right? That might be the dog, that might be the newborn, because newborn can get out there, just keep them covered, keep it covered, whatever, and
Right.
secure, and you go for that walk. There's healthy exercise for you. It's opportunity to bond, right? You're
Mhm.
doing three things right now all at once. You're getting exercise, you're bonding with your child, and you're giving the birther some time to rest. Like, come on
Yes.
now, that's like trifecta right there, right? And so, there's a great point you brought up, and I always share that with families because there's always like I said, there's always opportunity.
Yeah, yeah, definitely agree. And then just the question is like, what should partners do if they're feeling overwhelmed, frustrated, or just unsure about breastfeeding? If they've come from families that breastfeeding wasn't even a topic,
Mm.
and then it's the first time they're really hearing it, and while having their partner, like, what can they do to support themselves when they're going through that type of feeling, and how can they support the person who's breastfeeding?
I think that is a very loaded question, right? Because number one, you deal with the aspect of education, right? If you're coming into this world not knowing what breastfeeding is, right? And your significant other, the birther's like, hey, I want to do this, then you have to educate yourself, number one, right? What is it? What are the benefits of it, right? What does it actually look like? What is a typical journey? Not to say that this is going to be, the journey, but what does a typical journey look like? And so being able to have that knowledge and education, number one. Number two, and there's so much more into that education piece, but number two, communicating with the birther what are their breastfeeding goals, right? Like understanding what it is that they want so that you can understand how you are to show up, right? If
Mhm.
they want 3 months of breastfeeding solid and that's it, then it's no point of you trying to go bring in some other things that's going to hinder that process, right? Or it's no point of you saying, well, I want to go 6 months. Well, they're like, I want 3 months, right? Like it's coming to the consensus of what the goals are so you can be on the same page. And I think again, there's so much more that goes into that as well.
Yeah.
Um, and then thirdly, I would say that, as you talk about education, as you talk about communication on goals, it is understanding that if things aren't going the way that the birther wants them to go, maybe there's complications, maybe there's things coming up. Then third is knowing the resources that are available to you as the partner as well as the birthing person, right? Knowing what's in your community.
Mhm.
Such as, if you're in the Southeast Michigan area, Nature's Playhouse, right? There's IBCLCs that exist in the community, CLCs such as myself that exist in the community, but understanding what the resources are so that way it's a tool in your bag. When you need to
Mhm.
pull out that tool, it's not like you got to go look for it. You know exactly what to do, call them up, and then begin to make those connections.
Yes. And that, I guess, while we're doing this, we should give out homework. And if you have a breastfeeder or chest feeder that you have, and they're going to be having a baby soon, as the partner, maybe you should start looking into some resources in your
Hmm.
area, asking questions, asking your doctor, the doctor that when you go to those visits with them, asking the doctor if they know any breastfeeders or breastfeeding support at any point around your community, and just start there. Because I know even that, just trying to get resources as a person who's giving a baby, I mean, having a baby, it can be so many things happening, especially if
Hmm.
there may be complications with the baby or, the stress that comes with having a child and going to the doctor and all those things. So that could be helpful too as a partner is to start doing that research
Exactly.
to find resources in your area that you can support. That would be an extra pointer for you.
You're like,
Yeah,
listen, I got this list all ready together. They're gonna be looking at you like, what? Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
you've been doing
See,
the
you were doing the work. You were doing the
part.
work, right?
um,
Understood the assignment, as they say, right?
yes. Um, and then my other question is, we know how it is with our families in most cases. There's a lot of family members that don't understand what breastfeeding means. And then there's a lot of comments that come in, and there's people coming into your space that are
Mhm.
not as positive about breastfeeding. How can a partner support in that way?
I mean, respectfully, number one, kick them out the space. You know what I mean? Sometimes you got to get that negative energy out of your face, right? And sometimes you got to be the bad guy, right? It's not being the bad guy to your nucleus family, but it's like, listen, these are the things that we want to do, right? And we don't need that right now,
Right.
and that's just from a real, raw perspective.
Mhm.
Now, there's other things you can do, right? Number one, or number two, because I think number one still get that negative energy out your face. But the other things you can do is take the education and learnings that you have, right? And then
Mhm.
share that with your family, with your friends, with those who may have an opposing view, right? You don't need to convince them. Number one, it's not your job to tell them and to get their buy-in to what you want to do for your family, right? I
Right.
still say that breastfeeding is the best form of feeding you can do for your child, right? Knowing that that may not be the option for everybody, but then you work from there, right? Breast milk, if I can be a little bit more specific, is the best form of food for the baby, right? That's what we know, right?
Mhm.
If you can breastfeed, great. If you can pump that milk, into a bottle, great. However, get that baby the breast milk they need. And so understanding that that nutrition, right, which is tailor made for the baby, right, helps them to have the best possible start in life, helps them to gain the immunities that they need, right, from mother's milk. Those are some benefits that you want to begin to highlight, saying, to them that it's proven, data has shown that when babies have, breastfed babies are oftentimes less likely to have more illnesses, more diseases, asthma's reduced, all these different things, diabetes, obesity, all of that, right? And there's also ties to reduction in some infant death syndrome, right? All these things matter. And
Right.
so understanding the facts to be able to convey those facts, again, not to get permission, but just stating this is why you're doing it, I think is another thing that's really huge and important.
Yes, I completely agree, and the first thing he said was, "If they don't agree, get that negative energy out of the space." That's number 1, okay?
Right, right.
Unapologetically and respectfully, it's
Hmm.
time to go. But
That's it.
also having a list of things that you need and not saying no to it. If they wanna help, have them buy you some groceries because your
Hmm.
breastfeeder's gonna need to eat and you're gonna need to eat as well. So just really making sure that you're not saying no when there needs to be support, and making sure that you have a list of the things that you need support in, especially when it's breastfeeding, which is food, hydration, and really keeping your space, peaceful.
Clean. Yeah, clean. Yeah. You want to come see the no, I don't need you to see the baby. I need you to clean right now. That's what I want you to do. You can
Right,
clean. Just don't vacuum if they sleeping, but you can do everything else. You know what I mean?
right.
So
Yeah. And then just question about long-term support.
hmm.
So, there's a stipulation that you're only supposed to you only breastfeed your baby for 6 months or
Hmm.
a year, but don't go over that. And, a breastfeeder, a chest feeder want to feed their baby up to 3 years, 4 years.
Hmm.
I know for me personally, I've fed my babies up to 4 years.
Hmm.
Um, and also the feeling of breastfeeding outside of the home, all that comes with that. How
Hmm.
can a partner support in those ways?
So there's two immediate answers that come to mind. Number one, again, understanding what the goals are, right? Got to be on the same page about goals. And so if the goal is to go 2 years, then what does it look like to help support in the 2 year goal, right? Because when you get to the point now of transitioning to that next question, right, there's oftentimes stigma beyond when babies are breastfed longer than a year, right? And so what does it look like then to, I like to say, normalize it, right? I had to be a big advocate for not only like my immediate family, but others, friends around me, like normalizing it. And my wife was much so also a support in that, like, yeah, he don't care about that because he's a CLC. That doesn't matter. Like, I'm like, yeah, go feed your baby. You know what I'm saying? Like, I understand out of your own comfort if like you want to be covered or if you want me to leave. I'm not like I'll do whatever makes you comfortable, but that baby got to get fed, right? So it's
Right,
actually being an advocate and normalizing, like, no, like she feeding. You want to go cover you want to go in the bathroom and eat your food, you do that. But she about to sit right here and do what she got to do, right? You know what I mean? Like that's just how it is. And so um again, understanding the goals, right? Whatever that looks like, and then supporting with advocating and normalizing it, and then offering any additional supports that's needed, right? Because we understand and know that sometimes it is complicated when you're out and about, right? Or you're in a space where it's just not necessarily all the time feasible because of the crowds and things like that. So being able to provide a space or navigate or think ahead, again, putting getting those brownie points ready, thinking ahead about, okay, if you do need to feed, you can go X, Y, and Z, right? Like mapping out where, strategizing and being prepared in that way. But sometimes it can be as simple as just, hey, if we got to go to the car, we're going to the car together. I'm with you, right? And letting that birther and breastfeeder, chest feeder know that they are not alone in this process. I think it's huge. When you know you're not alone with anything you're going through, you oftentimes are more inclined to stick it out because you know you have that
right.
support.
Yes, that's so true. Um, yeah, having a plan, like you said, and making sure that the chest feeder, the breastfeeder has a plan or helping them have that plan or goal and reaching that. And
Hmm.
that's what you stick with, right?
Hmm.
And that not let anyone sway you otherwise. So I do definitely agree with that. Now we understand that some cannot completely exclusively breastfeed
Right.
and some may need to use formula.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts on that? And how can a partner support when it comes on to having to provide formula for their baby?
So again, these are great questions, many, many thoughts. Number one, at the end of the day, baby has to get fed, right? Like we're not gonna be like, well, you can't get breast milk, you ain't gonna eat. No, that's abuse. You can't do that, right? Like, no, you have to get fed. And so with that, I think there's different factors to consider, right? So many birthers experience, some mental health challenges regarding the fact that maybe they can't breastfeed, chest feed, and so offering that emotional support, I think is so vitally important. That this does not mean you're a failure as like a mother, right, or a birther or whatever. Like, um, and not to mention that sometimes, right, like getting the level of support needed. Maybe, there's things that can be done to help support with breastfeeding and chest feeding. So don't discount that. But let's just say that that is not in the cards. That's not able to happen, right? And so then we have to, like you said, resort to the alternative of formula feeding. Well, then you can do other things such as investigate, find out what are the best options available, right? Because all formulas are not created equal. We've learned that throughout the last couple years, especially during that whole, post-COVID time. You want to make sure you are looking for the best options for your baby. And so keeping that in mind, I think is very, very much so key. Another thing to also be mindful of is that along with that emotional support that's necessary, because some may find it a struggle to not be able to feed, like also lifting them up, right, lifting them up in terms of that encouragement, that emotional support that's there, but also saying, hey, you know what, if we do have to go this route, then I can be that much more supportive with you, right? I can take the baby on so that you can go do X, Y, and Z. Sometimes we have experiences where moms and birthers are preparing to go back to work and they aren't quite ready because they still want to be able to feed. And it's like, well, this is complicated because I can only feed these many hours out the day. Well, then as a supporter and a partner, you're like, okay, well, no worries. I got you. We're gonna make sure that when you get home and you can get reconnected with baby, then y'all can have y'all time, right? And so it's also thinking through, like, if you know that that's something that you have to negotiate and navigate around, begin talking, begin planning. What does that look like for you? I'm going to make sure I take baby, during the day or whatever. I'm gonna have the bottles ready if they got to go to daycare, grandma's, whoever, right? We're going to make sure that situated is tight and solid. so that when reunification can take place, right, then you can breastfeed. And also keeping in mind that throughout that process, sometimes other factors biologically can happen, right? Sometimes moms experience and birthers experience engorgement, right? Mastitis, all these things can happen. And so, like, being prepared with having, again, those resources on deck. So if these things do occur, you don't have to like struggle through it. You can make a call to get the support that's needed.
Yes, that's a good point. And also about going back to work, because I completely forgot about that whole experience of going back to work while you're
Yeah.
still breastfeeding. And it's true, having a plan so that when you get off of work, I can take the baby so you can pump or just
Mm-hmm.
rest. Because
Mm-hmm.
resting and, trying to eat and do all the things at work and breastfeeding and dealing with all that comes with breastfeeding at a working
Hmm.
space.
Or
But
pumping, right? Like,
yeah,
yeah, if you don't have a
pumping,
pumping
all
room or all of that, yeah.
it's a lot of overstimulation,
Mm.
sometimes depending on where you're working, especially if it's a space where, breastfeeding is not really celebrated
Mhm.
or supported. So, yeah, definitely knowing what your partner needs in those spaces and how you can support them when they come home. That's so,
Mhm.
so important. And I guess to close out, is just what are your lasting thoughts just overall about breastfeeding? I would say what has been the highlights of your own experience as a partner supporting your wife while she was breastfeeding?
Mhm.
And what is a lasting thought you would want to give to someone who's supporting their partner?
So one of the thoughts that come to mind actually takes me back to the top of our conversation, which was like, you know, breastfeeding seems like such an isolated thing where partner is out, right? And it's just like a mom baby thing, right? Birther baby thing. So I made up in my mind, I was like, oh no, I'm gonna be included in this process. I would actually stand right over my wife's shoulder and look into our baby's eyes when she was feeding, because I was like, listen, yeah, I brought you over here so that you can eat. We in this together. Like, and I would just make sure that we had eye contact so that they were like, oh, it's both of you, right? You're both involved in this. Yes, we're both involved in this. My involvement is a little different, but we're both involved in this. Um, and so that really stuck out because I never forget my daughter's eyes going back and forth between me and my wife as she was feeding. And I was like, yeah, like, man, this is a wonderful, this is a wonderful thing right here. And so that I think that's one of my most memorable moments. It happened very early on, and it just like solidified for me, like, yeah, this is what it's about. Um but, again, just other thoughts is when you're on this journey, right? Find opportunity to, number one, give grace and be supportive. Support is different for everyone, but support is needed by everyone, and it cannot be underestimated, right? And so, whatever you can do to be that support on that journey, and understanding what the goals are, and having that collective understanding, so that you're both moving in the right direction, will set you up for great success along your parenting and breastfeeding journey.
Yes, thank you so much for those thoughts. And I agree, it takes two to tango. It took 2 to bring this baby here, it's gonna take
Exactly.
2 to get this baby fed too.
There you go. There you go.
And to make sure each other is fed as well. So,
Right.
yes, thank you for that. And just to support those who don't have, like a living-in partner, reach out to your family
Mhm.
members, reach out to your
Mhm.
friends, reach out to the people that are close to you. Have that group around you before you even have the baby so that you
Mhm.
know you have that support because postpartum is another thing that we don't really talk about but needs to be talked about. And so having that group around you can definitely help with breastfeeding and educating them if you can, or bringing them to your childbirth education
There
class.
you go. There you go.
To make
Yeah.
sure that you get the support you need because we cannot go through this postpartum journey alone. We didn't have this baby alone, and we shouldn't be taking care of this baby alone or healing alone either. We
Mm-mm.
need that support system around us. Reginald, I'm so thankful that you were able to do this with me. I'm excited for what's to come. I'm so excited that you are supporting Just Playhouse and this fatherhood group that you've started. Shout out to
Yes.
Get At Me Dad and all the great work that you all are doing in Michigan. And so I just want to thank you so much for your time and really sharing your thoughts on how partners can support breastfeeders and chest feeders. So I want to thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.